Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Today, we're picking up part 2 of our conversation with Jeremy about starting a business using cold email. In part 1, we talked about where to go when you're starting from zero, no customers, no business idea. And Jeremy explained how to use cold email to generate business ideas, ID, pain points, and even markets that you can go after and sell something to. Today, we go from the feedback that we collected, a business idea we generated in part 1, and Jeremy tells us how to take that info and turn it into cash, specifically getting your first 3 customers. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now.
All right. So where do we start?
Let's start with the big picture here. I heard a quote or a slogan, something from Y Combinator, I believe. It sounded like, make something people want and tell them about it. Is this step of the growing a business that simple? Or do you see that there's more steps involved here?
That's not a bad quote, actually. I would personally think that the biggest mistake that people make at this stage, once they figured out their business idea, is that they will go ahead, collect a new list, and then start cold emailing. But the goal is actually in the people you already contacted. And way too often people neglect relationship. They just see that as a one-time relationship or one-time transaction. Like when they say no, then, okay, that's it. He said no. And then they move on.
X them off.
Yeah, exactly. But in fact, people will always tell you no for like, not yet. So you could always come back and say, hey, I know last time we talked about this wasn't like super urgent on your map, but just in case it is now, or just wanted to let you know where we're at, and then just feed them into, this is what I heard from the 70 interviews that I've been having. Clearly, those are like the 3 most biggest point, and I decided to go with X.
Let's take this from step 1 here. It sounds like step 1 is go back to the people you've already contacted. Start there, right? Now,
yeah, 100%.
Going a little bit further, how many buckets of conversations will I have if I've reached out? So I'll have people who don't answer my cold emails and never, get in touch with me. So that's one group. I'll have another group who said, yeah, no, I'm not worried about this problem at all. And maybe I'll have another group that says, man, if you can solve that, I'd definitely be interested. So tell me, Jeremy, let's start with the first one who just completely go ghost on us. We never hear from them. Should I bother circling around back to them?
Hell yeah. You actually use QuickMail or any other automation. Sorry, shameless plug here. But, it costs nothing. Just do it. And, very often people just don't reply to you because they think like, oh, it's one of those person that plenty of idea, not really, interested. And so what you really want is just to show like you're dedicated. And what the most beautiful way to do it than, persistence and progress. It's like, hey, this is what's been made. Still would love to talk to you because I heard so many great things about XYZ or whatever. But
sure,
there you go.
For example, I'm just thinking if you found out that's one person, one company on your list who didn't get back to you, ended up, I don't know, picking up a new account that they've been talking about on their blog, that might be a perfect opportunity to jump in and say, hey, congrats on picking up Nike as the thing. You may want, this may help, or just thought I'd check in case this is relevant today, something like that.
I think that will work even better, but I don't even think you need to be that fancy or complicated. Simply just let them know about your progress and give them a window of opportunity to call you again. And very often, actually, people come back and say, shit, who's this guy? Because suddenly, they keep on getting used to hearing from you and then seeing progress. And people would like to associate with that most of the time. So at least they'll give you the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, he's been working on it for 6 months. He keeps on, keeping me in the loop. All right, let's hear him.
Sort of 2 quick things for those of you listening and want to make use of this list here. As you pick up new customers in your brand new business, doing some name dropping or including some testimonials that boost your credibility might help start a conversation. And also, you're going to be updating about your progress, but just make sure you keep it interesting for the reader. It's not all about your business, even though it's an update. So you have to make sure you're continuing to explain how this is going to help them reach their goals.
either them, or if you haven't heard from them, about someone else who's benefiting from that, or someone else who's like super excited and he's a star in that industry, or someone you could borrow some credibility from other people you talk to in order to just inject it into your email. So you don't have to make it just about you, but say like, hey, I got like lots of people like super excited lining up for this, should we talk? I'm sure it could also help your business. I mean, that would work pretty well. One other thing you have to also remember is not because they don't reply that they don't fit your criteria. If you put them at the beginning into your list of prospects, it's for a good reason, I hope, if you've done your prospecting properly. So you don't want to give up on them just because they don't reply.
Okay, let's move on to the last two buckets. You talked about the second bucket of people that gave you feedback, but weren't crazy about the idea on the initial call or email exchange. You mentioned to come back to them, don't ignore them, and share an update. Any tips for this person who's reaching out to a group like this?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You should thank them for having spent time with you, right? That's the very first thing, is saying like, hey, look, thank you so much for helping me on this journey, whatever. And I just wanted to, keep you posted. I know this is not your most pressing need, but I still wanted to let you know what I decided to pick up, what I learned along the way. And this is, what people are doing, blah, blah, blah. And just a very thankful email, giving them as much information as you can that you learn along the way, and telling them what you're going to do and what's been done already. And then people will value that. That will give you some karma. They may actually then later on talk with someone, hear that they had this problem, and then say, hey, that's funny. This guy is a good dude, and he's working on this project, whatever. And that goes a long way.
That's a great tip, but I'm noticing it's not bashing them over the head with a sales pitch here. It's sort of just, thanks, I acknowledge the fact that you told me this wasn't pressing, but here's sort of an update. Does that mean that maybe...
You have to think long-term here at this stage.
There you go. Okay, and it doesn't mean that you'll never reach back out. Maybe in 6 months or a year, it could be worth...
Yeah, your product could actually evolve. And those people will be the ideal people to let know first, because their business may have changed, their priorities may have changed. And, it's kind of the same theme as the first group. It's like people kind of like use it like, those blades that, you shave once and then you throw and you trash and thinking like it's 10-cent stuff. If you want to build a business, you're going to have to be building relationship for the long term and helping people as much as you can. And people will value that.
Light bulbs should be going off. I think that's a solid goal. You want to build a business, you should start by building relationships. There's one other group we haven't talked about. That is the group of people who said, you know what, Jeremy, that sounds like a pretty cool idea. Yeah, I am struggling with it. Do keep me posted when you figure out a solution for this. Okay, so these, I'm guessing, are probably the lowest hanging fruit of the group of leads that may become your first customers. How do I not screw this up?
Yeah, it's easy to screw it up. It's simply, to go raid your silence on them. What you have to do at this stage is keep them posted. You don't want to come back with like, here we go, this is the login and password, give it a try. There is way more communication upfront. So once you determine that that's an idea they'll be interested in, what the best approach at this stage is like saying, you know what? Okay, let me come back to you. I have a few more interviews to do. I'll keep you in the loop. And then you come back with an email and saying like, this is a problem I decided to address because XYZ, here's what I learned. And I think I come up with an idea or with a solution, and I'd like to present it to you, right? You don't go ahead and then build anything at this stage yet. You keep them involved. You basically ask for a second meeting where you can present, what you found, and you sort of like the solution that you're going for. Like, acknowledge your pain. This is what I understood. It's been shared by like 5 other people that I contacted. They seem to be in a similar range. He has a potential solution that I'm thinking of. Can we discuss them on a quick call or some stuff like that to make sure that I understood properly? This is a solution that will fit your business, or those sort of thing, or to make sure I didn't forget, one corner or some idea or something like that.
So they say, sure, you jump on a call together. I'm guessing maybe you show them a few slides, or you just talk through the problem, make sure they know you understand it. And then you probably spend a bit of time showing them how you would go about solving it. Meanwhile, nothing has been built yet. You haven't wasted any time or money.
And I guess this stage could turn down to personal preferences in how you're doing it. Do you do effectively that big presentation or things like an info pack kind of thing? I do like that because it gives you, especially when you're rookie in sales, it gives you some sort of like support or something that you can, let's look at this over there. That's my proposal. No, that's not me. I don't want to be in a spotlight kind of thing. So it makes it easy on people. And I mean, at this stage, you could get a client right there and then because you're basically having a second call with this person, which means you're not totally a stranger. The second thing is that you acknowledge all the problems. So that person thinks like, hey, it does know me, right? It's good. And the third thing is you show a solution that hopefully will be good and they will have the opportunity to just give their 2p like, oh, it'd be better if it was in blue or whatever kind of thing. And then at that stage, you could say, and here's what I'm thinking about pricing. And that's a great place to actually talk about pricing because you shown you understood them, you show the solution, they're excited. And here's the pricing. And the way you can bring the pricing into this picture is simply by saying things like, look, I understand you're taking a risk with me. So, I want to do like a really, really great deal for people who actually jump on on this with me so early in the process. And here are the things. And usually what will actually work pretty well is to actually give some sort of like long-term commitment. It's like, look, I'm not looking for just, your $100 or whatever for the first month and then that's it. I'm really looking for someone who will be looking at this in long term with me and maybe, stay 6 months, a year or 2 years. Then we can have feedback. I can keep on improving the product and then making sure that's really helping your business because that's really why I'm doing this. I'm like in pitch mode already. But that's basically the angle that you want to do. And then you can propose, here's a 6 months, a 1 year or 2 year contract, with like minus, I don't know, 40% or even 50% on a 2 year one because it's a long-term one. And you'll be surprised. One last thing I want to say about the pricing and stuff. And I know this is like nerve-wracking for a lot of rookies or newbies on this, but it doesn't have to. And one thing that people have to think about it is that the time that person spent with you talking about his business, which is probably like 2 hours total, 1 hour for the first interview, 1 other hour for, presenting the solution and stuff, it's probably costing more than what you're asking, right? So you may be actually asking for $500, even 2K, but that's not that much for a business, right? If you're going for $200, it shouldn't be, I'm not going to spend 2 hours every time I want to spend $200, right? So there's this, even though it's nerve-wracking for people, the number itself is not really what is the big thing here. So get it out quickly, just give them options and just say like, does that sound fair to you? Or does that sound like something we can work with?
Okay. So I want to circle back to pricing in a little bit, but I'll share a quick tip that a sales coach of mine helped me transition to talking about pricing, and it may be applicable to this conversation. Basically, you just sort of, when you get to that point in the call where everything's sounding right, they're sharing feedback, they're saying, yep, this looks good, just simply asking, saying, okay, so by now we've gone over X, Y, and Z. Does it make sense to look at what I'm thinking about charging? Does it make sense to talk about price here? And you sort of let them say yes or no. I mean, in my experience, I haven't had a single person say like, no, I don't want to see pricing when they get to that point, especially if you...
Pricing? I thought it was free.
Yeah, there you go. Click. One extra pricing question, because I get this pricing questions kind of a lot from others in this space. And I was surprised at first, but it does require a little bit of thinking, especially early on. If you do manage to secure the first customer, and remember this cast is just talking about the first, basically 3 customers you land. If they say yes quickly, they don't balk at the price, does that mean your price is too low? The next call, should you adjust based on feedback, or do you keep it consistent for your first, let's say, 3 customers?
That's a good question, but I think it's an irrelevant question. And I'll tell you why. Because here's the dirty little secret, although there's nothing dirty about it, actually. But here's the secret. On the first row of interviews, when you're trying to get the information and dig vertically, you should have, during the whole interview, a really good understanding of how much a customer costs them or how much a problem is costing them. So what you do is a simple rule. You just charge 10% of that, right? So if you find a problem that the person is like, oh man, my pen keeps breaking, I keep on having to change it and it's like $2 and stuff. Well, just think of, do you want to be in business for 20 cents? So think about the problem. If the problem is costing them 5,000 every month, they'll be happy to pay 500. No problem. Where do I sign?
Reading in between the lines here, if you're not tackling a problem that's valuable enough, just shift your sights to something that people care more about, that matters more to the business.
If you've been following what I was saying in the first episodes, if you're actually looking at only what matters to people, then usually you'll find things that are more like that 20 cents kind of problem. But if there is nothing, then don't keep beating a dead horse. There is no money, there is no money. Just sometimes you could do your job very well. It's just that there's no problem that is worth solving or have enough money with that person or that market.
I think this is much more important than figuring out the perfect thing to say in a cold email. If you've nailed a problem in a market that can pay for it, you're off to a great start. So let's say, Jeremy, we've tapped the 3 different buckets of people we already reached out to. We managed to secure 2 customers from the first pitch, we can say. Now it's time to build it, right? And let's say you build it, you're delivering it. I want to focus now, the last part of the cast, on the list of people that we haven't contacted yet. What should we say? What can we say to them if we wanted to try and win one more customer over from a brand new segment?
Yeah, I like this. And usually that's going to happen.
By the way, we can focus this question in 2 parts. One is, who should we contact? So are there any segmenting ideas? And then any tips for what to say early on in this kind of business campaign?
I'm not too sure about segmenting per se, unless you discover that your idea is more suited to big firms or small firms or whatever kind of like categories. Then yeah, sure, you can pre-filter your list again. In terms of what you can say, don't go in sales mode. There's no point in doing that. But what you can definitely be doing is saying like, hey, such and such had problems and we decided to solve it that way. Does that mean that's something that you could also benefit? Or is that something that you're experiencing? Or that sort of things actually works very well because you're basically using your list to pre-qualify them or people qualify themselves. And that's much better. It's like the pull versus push approach, right? And it's much better that way because people feel more in control, feel more like, oh, what's this thing? Or, I've been working for the last 6 months with such and such, like dropping names, conducting more than X interviews. By the way, here's the PDF or the white paper on. No, you don't have to put all those things. I'm just like elaborating here. Maybe that's your follow-up, right?
Right.
But hey, does that make sense to jump on a call? This is a problem I decided to tackle. I got a few solutions for that. Such and such is super excited. Does that make sense to have a conversation? Or is that something you're experiencing at your company? Or should I talk to someone specific in your company? Vary the call to action, do your A/B testing as we're mentioning, and then you'll figure out what works best. But it's not rocket science at this stage. It's only a mindset approach.
I'm noticing a clear distinction between this kind of email targeted towards the new list and the first email that we talked about in part 1 that was just here to ask some questions, get some feedback. The first email sounded to me a very humble, saying that you are just starting out, you're interested in what they thought about X. But this second go round, to, even though it's a new list, you've got a clear idea of what you're solving and you're simply asking, do you struggle with this as well? Or would you be interested in seeing how X has solved it? And that's just a lot clearer. And you're basically piggybacking on all the learnings you've done in part 1, essentially.
And one of the other things you could say is either as a PS or as a follow-up, you could say, by the way, this is what I found in the last 70 interviews that I've done with this industry. You may find 1 or 2 things that is interesting. Here we go, sort of like free of charge kind of thing, right? And if you've done your research properly, they'll look at it and say, oh, shit, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't know that. So, oh, yeah, we got that as well. And then, that will be much easier to have a conversation with such and such.
In my experience, these kinds of conversations usually go like this. It's saying, hey, we've solved X for Y. Would you be interested in seeing how we did it? Yeah, sure, go ahead. You share a little case study or even a few facts. They say, sounds interesting. And you follow up saying, great, can we get 5 minutes to chat about this to see if it's relevant for your company? They say, all right, sure, here's my cell. You pick up the phone. And at this point, Are we sort of in this pitch that we just talked about in the last group, people who said they were interested and sort of ready to hear what you've got? We ready to basically say like, this is the problem. Yes. Is this same? Okay. Are we ready to talk about price? Yes. Okay. That it's basically a similar conversation, right? From that other thing we talked about.
It is. Also, it sounds like I know my stuff from the very first email that I'm sending to now. Now we're starting entering a world where I don't quite like it, which is like you can actually do two ways. You could either, keep on that sort of light touch and soft touch, soft sell kind of thing, no push, just pull kind of thing. And that works. That's fine. Or you can do the hard sell guy, and that also works. So I guess it depends on, your preference, your style, and what you want or what you actually see for your business and where you want to go. So at that stage, I will say I'm not so much of the hard pushing guy. I just prefer to build something great, present the things, and then let people make their sort of choice. And I know I leave a lot of money on the table, but at the same time, I'm happier that way. So I guess it depends on how you feel about that.
Yeah, sort of a style question you got to ask yourself.
Exactly.
One last question for me, specifically about this stage in the cold email process. You've maybe got your first 2 customers from the conversations you had in part 1. Now, what do I automate if I'm trying to get my 3rd customer? I mean, am I ready to completely start building out campaigns and finding new segments and adding them into software like QuickMail? Or should I acknowledge that this is very early days and I should do it by hand to see what I can learn?
Okay, so the by hand, by then, you should have done it already. So you should be familiar with your sort of like automation system. You know what works. You're getting some replies and some demo calls. That's definitely a stage where automation is perfect for you. And in fact, you keep on saying 3 customers, but if you've done that right, you should probably have like 10 customers, 10 to 20 customers already. That's not a big stretch because you've been listening to the market. You picked up a problem that is very well known in the market. You solved it in a way that people want to give you money. You kept people in the loop. If you got only 3, you're actually doing a bad job, honestly. So you should have your 10 to 20 customers at this stage.
And I imagine maybe a good chunk of them will come from referrals from...
Yeah, totally.
Customers are happy.
No, absolutely. That's exactly how it works. In fact, you may call to someone who has a bit of influence and then he will say, oh, you should call such and such because they have this problem right now. And by then, you actually built enough trust that they feel comfortable referring you to their colleagues or the people that are in this industry.
So you're starting to get a bit of a snowball here where more customers bring you more customers, which brings you more case studies and credibility and testimonials, which keeps it rolling. Yeah,
absolutely. So at this stage, you definitely should have already your email copy in place. Like that thing that we say like, hey, I've surveyed a lot of people. Is that a problem you're experiencing? So you should have already the beginning of your sales funnel already in place at this stage. And that means that you should get regular demo calls already in place. So that's where you really benefit from automation, because with automation, you could say like, every day I want to contact a certain number of people. And then that is going to translate to a certain number of demo calls. And if you do that on a regular basis, then you're going to have regular demo calls. And, it's not rocket science. At some point, your skills are going to get better. You're going to close more and more people. You're going to get more and more, oh yeah, but it would work for me. I love it. But could you also do X and Y? And that's really how you get your product to develop. Then you can re-engage with the other one and say, hey, would X and Y actually work for you? It's like, oh, great. I haven't thought about that. And like, oh, no, not interesting for me. But at that point, you'll become into product development and, prioritization and stuff like that. And that's a different game. But from the point of cold emails, then I think your funnel is already set up.
And this is the exciting time for me. I don't think there's anything more thrilling in a new business when you start to get like some traction. You've gone from 1 to 10. But if you're in this stage or when you get to this stage, keep your eyes open because the idea of your perfect customer will change. You're not going to have it nailed perfectly. You may find out that 7 out of the last 10 customers you just signed up were from nonprofit and you had no idea you could make an impact in that market. But just keep your eyes open when you notice strange things, patterns in new customers, start targeting them specifically and write copy just about those kinds of businesses to sort of piggyback on the wins you're getting. That's a always worthwhile just to keep learning and never assume you've got it completely figured out.
Writing is easy because, I remember my first customer, I could use them as my avatar, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jeremy, anything else I have to know or our listeners need to know when they're at this stage, they're starting to get the snowball rolling a bit? Any parting thoughts?
I think we dropped enough gems here. But I just want to say one thing that is like counterintuitive, especially when you're starting your business, is I remember at that stage, I knew every one of my customers. There were not any single user on QuickMail that I didn't talk to, did a demo to, get a feeling for what they wanted. And having at that stage, I started to have automatic sales. And that means like suddenly I got like a notification that a sale's been made and I don't know who this person is. And honestly, when you've done all that work that I discussed, it's freaking scary because you don't know who that person is. Who is he? Who is she? What does he want to use the software with? And then at that point, this is a different game because you're going to have to then proactively engage with the people and figure out what they want, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah. Who are they?
Exactly. And it was kind of scary at the beginning, strangely enough.
Interesting. So appreciate the fact that when you're starting small, you know everything about your customers.
Yeah, you're going to miss it when you lose it.
When you get so big, it's going to be hard to keep a hold of. But speaking of that, there's a conversation in the pipeline for automating all this. It's going to be a lot of fun, but use what you've found out in parts 1 and 2, get that business off the ground and snowballing downhill.
Sounds great. Keep us posted.
See you, Jeremy.
Bye, Jack.
All right, ready to get your first 3 customers? Then here's what you need to know to launch your startup with cold email. Number 1, start by contacting prospects that have already given you feedback in part 1. They're typically the quickest and easiest group of prospects to sell to. Number 2, never give up on your cold prospects. Even if they've ignored your previous emails, helpful follow-ups may win them over, especially when you share new case studies and results to boost your credibility. Number 3, reach out to new prospects by asking if they share a similar pain point or would like to find out how similar companies benefited using your solution. Use this to get the conversation started. And finally, adopt a long-term outlook and focus on building relationships with your prospects, especially in the early days, if you want to build a business that lasts. Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast.
So they can send awesome emails.
And make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.